Welcome to the B2B Thought Leadership podcast, where it's our job to share insights on how to become the go-to thought leader in your industry. I'm your host, Alejandro Sanoja, founder and digital strategist at Latin Empresarios, and today our guest is Sam Kelner. Sam is a business performance advisor at Insperity. He helps and advises business owners, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit leaders on how to maximize their businesses' growth potential to their most important asset, their people. Sam is passionate about providing solutions in key areas like revenue generation, administrative relief, net profit protection, better cost efficiency, employee engagement, and organizational culture. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for having me.
Sam, when your name enters a professional conversation in your industry, what do you think are the thoughts and emotions that come up for the people having that conversation?
At first, maybe they're a little scared to death that I might be trying to sell them something. Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, I came to Insperity because of the company's reputation and the 36-year history of truly successfully helping America's leading small businesses and nonprofits succeed that our communities can truly prosper. I believe the thoughts and emotions that you talk about that professionals feel about Insperity have a lot to do with the company's incredible success over the years, and that plays into how they feel. I also believe that many business and nonprofit leaders make assumptions about Insperity and what we do without fully understanding the scope of what we do, and are many times almost maybe embarrassed to ask. With other large companies like Exxon or HP, Home Depot, people at least know the industry and kind of the basics around what they do. And many times I find in our initial discovery meetings that my clients and prospects are kind of shocked by the scope of our services and kind of the premium solution that we provide in the marketplace. They many times assume that we are like the other low cost providers they've heard about or worked with over the years. And Insperity's reputation precedes itself with countless news stories every day that I get to hear about how we've made transformational positive impacts on the businesses and nonprofit organizations that we partner with. From helping them navigate the PPP program, even the PPP loan forgiveness process, answering the questions related to vaccines in the workplace, helping them stay out of the courtroom, providing their employees with Fortune 500 level quality health benefits, which in turn helps them retain and attract top talent for their companies, and predominantly eliminating the incredible administrative burden of compliance that we see today in today's economy. And really, the list goes on and on. I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. And Sam, it's clear that you've put in the work to build up your skills and your expertise, right? An example of that is you've gone through the executive MBA program at the University of Houston and you won awarded by faculty and peers the most outstanding student. And that's one side of it, right? Like you've worked on your features. If you think of yourself as a product, you have great features. You've worked on that. Now, something I've noticed is that you also pay attention to the packaging. It's no secret that the products that have better packaging are going to have more demand, are going to be able to command higher prices. Every time we've been in several calls, we've been in different events, we met at Bauer. Any time we met, we could say the typical phrase is that you looked well put together, right? Like you make sure you have your books, your background, your videos, everything has to look professional. Can you share with us at what point in your career did you started to pay attention to that side of the equation, to the side of the quality of the packaging of how you were presenting yourself as a professional?
Well, that's a great question, Alejandro. I think really it goes as far back as I can remember to when my mom, Rita, who's a social was a social worker for over 30 years, best heart I've ever known. She always taught my brother and I the importance of the first impression.
Hmm.
And that was, I've been writing thank you notes since I was a young boy. Got birthday gifts, and my mom would have my brother and I write a thank you note, and just I was raised to live a life of gratitude, and I think that all goes into that first impression. So to answer your question, I mean, directly, I think it really started back to what my mom especially really taught about making a good first impression and stuff.
So you mentioned good first impressions. You mentioned thank you letters. So it seems that you have some elements that help you be sure that people get to know you and to trust you. If Sam, if you, let's say we were putting a plan together for somebody that it's right now at college or graduating, what would be some of the steps that you would recommend them to take to be known as professionals in their industry?
You know, I've really made it a point from an early age to be a constant learner, seeking out new, educational experiences, traveling, seeing the world, learning about other people, ideas, and culture. And I really think that it kind of goes back to that, and just always be thirsty for new knowledge. Realize I would be the first to admit. Actually, probably my wife Marissa would be the first to say that I myself am still a work in progress,
Mhm.
but I have always been who I am, and that authenticity is what is really kind of my personal brand. I think, I think I'm being able to be straightforward with your clients, building a place where your clients can open up to you and be a confidant for them. And to be a trusted advisor, you have to be able to trust who you're sitting across from. So I really have tried to build my career around that idea.
Is there anything, Sam, that you would recommend people to not do? For example, I remember when I was starting to build the business, I would go to every networking event. I would meet with anybody that resembled a lead or somebody who was a little bit interested in what some of the services that we do. And then I learned that, hey, maybe I don't need to go to every event. That's a little bit of it could be a little bit of too much to just go everywhere, or maybe you don't need to meet everybody, right? Like maybe you need to qualify a little bit some people to see if there's really a, an alignment there with what we want to do next. So for sure I would have some recommendations of some of the things not to do if you want to grow a business. In your case, building that trust and building that thought leadership in any professional industry, are there any things that you would say don't do X to somebody who's starting?
Yeah, I think this goes back to when I was in college. I was 20 years old, and I got the opportunity to serve as an intern for President George W. Bush. And I worked for his senior advisor as an intern and in the West Wing just following 9/11. And something that really struck me, definitely politics aside, it was just how, and I remember this on my first day, how the president shared this belief that you're never late to a meeting. And he always said he never wanted to be late for a meeting because it was because he wanted to show respect for
Hmm.
the people that he's meeting with, for respect for their time. And I see a lot of things come up and stuff, but I see a lot of people out there in the business development sales world that we'll set meetings and it's they're showing up late, and I think from a very young age that really kind of stood out as something I believe my boss shared with me that back when that first day when I got started was something that President Bush expected his staff to be 5 minutes early to meetings, and or you were late. And I found that just really found him and that leadership quality to be just respecting people's time is a just a great quality to have.
Yeah, what's it saying? If you're 5 minutes earlier, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Something like that, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And that's something that requires no talent, right? By the way, whatever you do, you can always be on time.
Yeah.
Sam, so most people, if you look at people's careers, some recommendations to young people out there trying to be thought leadership could be, or anybody out there could be, hey, stay the course, pick a path, and build expertise in that, right? Like the more years that you accumulate in a particular area in business or in the professional world, the better it's going to be for you. Now, in your case and in my case is very similar as well. You've been in the private sector, you've been in government, you've been in nonprofit. Could you share a little bit about how that happened? Is that something that you plan, hey, I want to have a little bit of experience everywhere, or is it was just this is what I want to do at the moment and this is where I think I can create the most value?
Well, that's an awesome question. Actually, no, it wasn't planned at all. I went into, I started school at George Washington University in DC, and finished my undergrad at the University of Maryland, College Park. Um, During that time, I got to study in England for a year at the University of Kent at Canterbury. I got to study political science and government with kind of a minor secondary study of business and organizations while I was in the UK. And interestingly enough, one of the classes I took on people and organizations, and I wrote a paper on multicultural and diversity issues in large organizations. And at the end, all the students were getting their papers back, and um, I, I had gotten a really good grade on my paper, but the teacher professor had written on there, "Come see me after class." So I'm thinking, well, what's going on here and stuff. And I got up to the front of the room after everybody had left, and the professor said to me, she said, if I know you're heading down the path of getting into the public sector and stuff, but if you don't end up doing something in the public space, I think you have a real great future in the private space, working in business. And she said, you have a way of explaining in great detail your thoughts, and I just it was a great compliment, and so that was kind of the beginning of where I was like, I knew I had always had an entrepreneurial kind of spirit about myself, and I just thought. Coming out of college, I moved to Arizona after undergrad, and really didn't know anybody, but wanted someplace a little warmer than Minnesota when I was growing up there. And so I got into real estate. And then from there, opportunities came up. I have always been, I've learned from my parents over the years about being involved in the community as a volunteer and a lay leader. And so by getting involved in the community and different ways led me into the nonprofit space. And I was just been afforded some really incredible opportunities and just decided to open those doors when those opportunities came.
Sam, you mentioned being involved in the community, and it's evident when you look at your bio and your LinkedIn profile that you get involved in many elements when you join a community. And you moved to Houston, I believe, around in 2014, right? To the
Yep.
Texas area. So that's not a long time. In that time, you've built. You would think you have to be in Houston or in Texas all your life to build a valuable network. You've been in Houston and in Texas for only a handful of years, yet it's evident that you've been able to build a powerful network. And you've mentioned several different elements through our conversation, but if somebody, let's say it's in the same position where they're moving to a new city, they want to be able to have the biggest impact, which means connecting with people who can make that happen. What would you say would be your two or three step plan for somebody that wants to build a valuable network? I would say, I don't want to say fast because we know it's like relationships are like a tree and it takes time. But
Yeah, sure.
in the quickest time, what would you say is a good one, two, three step plan to build a valuable network in a short amount of time?
It is a very good question. I think for me, I I think I got great training by living for a year in the UK, living in DC, College Park area, then also Phoenix, Austin for 6 months, and then Houston. I've had to be adaptable. But also realize that my network, it's kind of goes back to it's a very small world. That children's song, it's a small world. I'll spare you the singing and stuff, but um, I really think it's amazing the incredible people I met in the 5 years I worked in Phoenix. I'm crossing paths with here in Houston and in Austin as they do business here. My contacts from my White House and Capitol Hill days are spread out all throughout Texas and the country that have continued to be thought leaders to me and mentors to me. I think what I would say, I think one of the greatest compliments I ever got from a very close friend was, Sam, you go out of your way to stay in touch and stay connected. And they said, this friend lives back home in Minneapolis, and he said, of all my friends that have moved away, you're really the only one that goes to great lengths to do everything that he can to keep the relationship going. We sometimes go a few months without talking, but we pick up like as if we hadn't missed a beat and stuff. And so I think um, tending to the network. And they don't have to be in your home city because it's amazing. I reached out to when I moved originally to Austin. My best friend was living there, at the time, and he he knew people in Austin, but I reached out to friends and contacts all across the country that that had yeah, great contacts in Austin and around Texas. And so many people made incredible introductions. So I would say first, stay in touch with the people and the relationships that you care about and care deeply about. And then also not not be afraid to reach out to those folks when you make a move, or even if you're still in the same city. Reach out to them, and you never know who they may go, oh yeah, I know X, Y, and Z over here. Let me make an introduction. And I make it a point. I want to be doing at least two introductions for every one introduction that I'm getting, and I think that's a great way of kind of that saying. There's that movie, Pay It Forward.
Hmm.
Um, I go into every meeting, much like you were saying. You've always taken every meeting you could to meet new people and whatnot. And I've always taken that same approach. Every conversation, I learn something new, and I've just been really blessed to have a great network that when I'm a resource and connector for them, they return and kind of pay it back and stuff. And it was never anything expected. It was just when you put yourself out there to help somebody else, they're going to do everything they can to help you when the time comes. So does that answer that question?
Absolutely. So you mentioned getting out of your way or going out of your way to stay connected, nurturing your relationships. And this was something completely different for me coming from Venezuela. When I went into power as well, it was network, network, network. So I remember during those 2 years, I did as much as possible. So Power MBA ambassadors, the clubs, the events,
Mhm.
everything they asked, I was there. And I remember at some point it was a little bit too much. I think it was great. I was able to build relationships during those 2 years, but I don't think it would be sustainable. So in your case, I know you're involved in a lot of things. How do you find that balance between the leadership positions you get invited, how many things you get involved? Do you have something like, okay, I do my job, I get involved in a nonprofit, and that's what I do until I get involved in a nonprofit board for this amount of time, and then after that I transition and do something else? Like, what is your organization's or your plan looks around? Do you send the thank you notes? Let's say X amount of days a week, you sit down and do the notes, because it can be time consuming to really be up to date with everybody and read the books that I know you're reading and do a good job and conduct the events. So how does Sam stay organized to make sure you have the time to do all of these things?
Yeah, it is. It's a balancing act for sure. You and I talk a lot about the books that we read, and I always enjoy your thoughtful input on a lot of the books that we've discussed. But one that really stands out is really that essentialism, and this idea
Hmm.
that you kind of have to focus your attention on the things that are going to be helping you take steps forward, and then the things that you're most passionate about. And I'm thinking back to when I started my staffing and recruiting firm back in Minneapolis. It was the staffing and recruiting company was called Integrity Employment. I was a co-founder of the company, and at our largest, we had 19 employees, and I really think that we from the get-go, I helped design a program to help military veterans transition from the military into civilian employment and life in general. I just I love doing that work, and I've carried that passion for helping military veterans into my professional life through, ever since launching that program. When I got to Houston, the first couple months after getting settled in my new job, I reached out. I did some googling and found Career Gear Houston, and met the executive director at Career Gear, who's Jamae. And Jamae Fishback, you want to talk about just an angel in the Houston community. We had met for what was supposed to be like a 30-minute meeting over coffee, and talked for hours about finding ways to provide recurring revenue generation so that she could continue to help more and more military veterans transition into civilian employment. And out of that came the Champions of Freedom. And I made it a point. I now serve as a member of the executive board of directors, and I'm the founder of the Champions of Freedom fundraising campaign. I've decided that outside of my work at Insperity, that this is what I'm focused and passionate about, and where my time is going to be predominantly spent. And the other element of this goes back to something. My parents were always there for my brother and I. My dad loved the saying that the most important job you'll ever have is being a husband and a father. Now that I'm the father of a little girl, she's 2, and we're expecting a second little boy in May. I knew that my priorities were providing for my family, doing a great job helping small businesses and nonprofits in this role at Insperity, and then my work in the community specifically for military veterans. The military veterans connection goes back to my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. He was liberated at Buchenwald concentration camp by the U.S. Army under General Patton. And I remember at a very young age, probably 13 or 14, just making a commitment to myself that I would, outside of my work life, I would spend as much time as I could helping the men and women who serve our country and stuff, and give back for everything that this country has given my family and I over the years and stuff. And so that all being said, essentialism, I picked, family, my professional work, and my passion for veterans as my kind of essential core, areas that I was going to focus on. And interestingly enough, when you take that approach of essentialism and really narrow it down, not only is your impact greater in those areas that you want to focus on, it's also your network will grow exponentially off of those experiences and whatnot. So hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, and so true. So many points. Thank you for sharing that, number one. And then So many great points you make. We could talk hours about books, I'm sure. I think it's great the point you make about like picking and prioritizing. I think it's Matthew McConaughey who's been promoting his book recently that talks about that at some point in his career he realized he was getting B's in like five things and he said, "Hey, I want to get A's in three," right? So family, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, family, his profession, and then his nonprofit charitable work. So it seems that there's some alignment there. Now, Sam, in all of this that you do, there has to be some component of promoting what you're doing. I know you're doing the book videos and you're posting content on LinkedIn. You're on camera all the time. You're conducting meetings. How do you deal with the typical fear of sounding or looking egotistical because you're doing so much self-promotion? How do you deal with the criticism that somebody might have when you start posting content or maybe that self-talk, right? Like I think 80% of self-talk is negative. We're always speaking badly to ourselves about what we're doing. So how do you deal with that so that you can push through that and keep promoting what you're doing to serve more people?
Well, to actually tie it back to a book, one of my favorite books is Simon Sinek's Start with Why. And when, I think if someone was looking at my posts on LinkedIn or my the events that I host for executives and C-suite executives and business owners, nonprofit leaders, even government leaders, they're all focused not on me or on Insperity. They're focused on giving back and helping others. I think I have always known the power of what American small business does for our economy. If you look at, I think the actual number, 65% or more of net new American jobs come from small businesses.
Mhm.
The impact that is being had by nonprofits. Here in town, like Career Gear and others, is immense. And so I focus my kind of everything I do um, on helping either businesses and nonprofits or helping to promote those organizations that I'm involved in or whatnot, or helping my clients grow their businesses. If I see something that a client or someone in my network is doing that is really I want the rest of the network to know about. I try to always keep the focus on helping other people grow their businesses or organizations, and so I don't ever really feel like it gets back to this kind of egocentric thing because I've really come at it with my why, which is wanting to ultimately help these businesses and organizations. Does that address the question
Yeah.
well? Okay,
So you've mentioned
good.
Sam building relationships, having an impact, connecting and building your network, helping people through the different organizations that you're involved with. And you mentioned something really important, which is we can tie this to the beginning, which is that first impression, right? For you to be able to have that connection, for you to be able to have that impact, that first impression is valuable. So when people ask you, what do you do? And you have that moment to create that initial impression, what is your typical answer?
I usually kind of a generic response, I guess, would be that I work with business owners and nonprofit leaders to really ultimately drive increased revenue by managing their risk, improving productivity, and containing costs. But ultimately, it comes down to individual learning the individual stories of each business and nonprofit in all the meetings I've had with business executives, owners, and nonprofit leaders, every single one of them has a different value driver that
Mhm.
is going to really be the reason they decide to partner with Insperity. And it's interesting, across the board. And our founder and CEO Paul Sarvati, in his book, Taking Care of Your People, he really talks about the fact that almost every obstacle that comes up in your in the business world, but also in the nonprofit world, can be tied back to HR related issues. Having the
Mhm.
right people in the right place at the right time is so essential. And the this idea of really enabling business owners and the nonprofit executives to get back to what they're truly passionate about is where I come in to truly help them in that regard.
And you mentioned, which I think it's mindful to, yes, you have your generic response, but you also try to pay attention to who you have in front to make sure you are communicating what's most valuable for them. And is this something that you've worked through testing different things to see what gets a response? Do you write those out and script it so you make sure you have the different answers? Like, how does the process look like? In my case, I'm super introverted. English is not my first language, so I have to basically practice it out and script it. For some other people, might be more of a natural process. In your case, how does your process looks like to make sure when people ask you what do you do, you're giving a mindful answer to what can be most valuable for them?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, stepping into this advisory role meant that I really felt a real immense personal responsibility to my colleagues and the Insperity trailblazers, as I would call them, before me, that have really built on the company's stellar reputation. And that reputation really kind of has always stood in the back of my mind that I'm helping to carry that torch. So I've made sure that I've worked at my messaging, and it hasn't come easily. I think Insperity offers incredible training. Probably some of the best training I've ever had in my professional career, and I really think that plays a role. So I don't know that I ever like sat down and wrote it out, but I did think about it, and as I've gotten to meet many leaders, business and nonprofit leaders. Those stories, the stories of how our company is helping them in different ways is really the best way to kind of hone that personal message, and that only comes from the greatest way to learn is from the experience, or even trial by fire. Um, and I think looking back, when I stepped into this role, I've worked with some really credible business, nonprofit, and government leaders over the years. I think back to Elias Saratovsky, was my regional director when I worked for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, in educating America and our leaders on the importance of the U.S. Israel relationship. He is an incredible orator. I mean, when he talks, people really listen, and he really spent time helping me become a better public speaker and a better presenter, and do it in a way that is a much more laid back and fluid communication style. And I really have always been grateful for everything that Elias taught me and the time he spent with me when I was at APAC. My former boss, Byron Cooper, at North Shore Steel, is the president and COO there. Um, he's been a longtime mentor who really encouraged me to go back to graduate school to
Mhm.
get my executive MBA. And I got my executive MBA at U of H. And one of the first courses that I took was on public speaking and communications with Ken Hazley, who's the president and principal at Corner Suite Communications.
Mhm.
And you want to talk about a brilliant guy, and just it provided so much great constructive feedback on just communications and public speaking. And over time, just got much more comfortable and more fluid with my communication style and stuff. So, and getting used to talking on video and this time as we're now in the midst of this pandemic, we're doing almost everything virtually. So being used to getting on camera and not being afraid of it. There were a lot of takes that I did before I posted my first video on LinkedIn and stuff. So it's a work in progress. Again, it goes back to that work in progress, constantly learning.
Sam, I think it's evident that you are focused on creating value for others, right? Go out of your way to connect with people, doing nonprofit work, working on your skills to make sure you can communicate, giving answers that are valuable to people. So let's think about who is that person that you can help the most out there. If there's some, is it a CEO? Is it an executive? Who is that person? If somebody's listening and they say, hey, I want to work with Sam, we know you can help them with several different things related to how they can generate revenue, how they can protect their profit, cost efficiencies, employee engagement. But who is that person? If you could pick only a certain group of people, who is that ideal client, like ideal persona that you can help the most?
Um, that's also a great question. And so it really comes back to the business owner and nonprofit leader that typically start the conversation with, I care deeply about my greatest asset, my people, my staff, and my employees. When it gets back to what Paul Sarvati's book, Take Care of Your People, when those business leaders and nonprofit leaders understand their greatest asset is in their people, the conversation flows right from there. So small, and to answer your question directly, small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits with owners, executives, as well as leaders that care deeply about their people.
Sam, if there's anybody listening to this and they're thinking, I need to get in touch with Sam right now. I want to have a conversation with him. I want to just create value with him. What would be a good way to get in touch with you? Is it we'll make a link to your LinkedIn profile? Is there any other resource, any other way in which you would like people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can feel free to email me at sam.kelner, Kelner, at insperity.com. And I'll be quick to respond.
Sam, you also, I would recommend people to follow you on LinkedIn. You share, I think it's weekly, the 90-second book reviews. You're always sharing value. Anything else that you would like to share with the audience? Any other resource, any other link, any other last messages before we close that you would like to share with the people listening to this conversation?
Yeah, I think first of all, thanks again so much for having me today. I follow everything that you're doing, and I'm excited to work a lot more together in the coming years. I appreciate just the great conversation that we have over books and on kind of the new trends coming in the business world. Beyond that, I would say to business owners, the C-suite executives out there, and nonprofit leaders. I would love to just have a conversation, learn more about your business or organization, find out areas that I can help you grow your business, find out introductions that I can make as a connector within the network, and ultimately be a resource for you, whether or not you ever become a client of mine. I realize that in most cases, only one out of every 10 people I meet with will become clients. But I would say at least 9 out of 10 will be longtime friends and people that I can network with and stuff. So I just look forward to having a conversation, learning more how I can help, and being a resource and connector in the future.
Well, and I can absolutely vouch for that out of that conversation, the event that we had, and the invitation that you made. So, first of all, thank you as well for being here. But I can say that's absolutely true. Out of that conversation, we already got two podcast guests. I was invited to two podcasts. One related to
Wow.
businesses in Houston, the other one, and I'm sure you'll find out about it's the Bauer alumni podcast. So I'll have
Yes.
some fun conversations there with Giovanni as well. So everything I can be evidence that everything that you're saying, that you're focused on creating value for whoever in any way possible. I can say that that's absolutely true. So thank you, Sam, for being on the podcast. I'm sure we'll have many more conversations, maybe we'll have to do a round two at some point. But thanks again for being on
Absolutely.
the show.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. And man, I'm hearing that just makes me smile ear to ear. That's what I'm here for, to try to be a connector. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for subscribing to the B2B Thought Leadership Podcast. It's our goal to help you become the go-to thought leader in your niche. That's why we do these interviews and we create the content. So if you want more of it, be sure to subscribe to the podcast in all the podcast platforms, and especially subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that subscription button, click the notification bell so that whenever new content comes out, you are the first to know about it. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.